Aquaman.
Oh, man. So yes, I am tardy to the party. I just watched Aquaman on HBO Max. And I know a lot of people have already seen this movie, but I am a little bit late, but that's okay. This movie was incredible. And if you haven't seen it, you have to check it out. But I was blown away, and I think that Aquaman is one of the best movies that has been released from DC thus far. And I was inspired. I was inspired by this movie to actually go hunting in my own comic book collection for some Aquaman keys, and I'll show you those very soon. But I was also inspired to go hunting online to better understand the value of some of the books that are associated with the characters that are depicted in the Aquaman movie. And I was blown away again. I was blown away with how cheap these comics actually are. If you want to see what books I found in my collection, and if you want to hear more about these cheap Aquaman keys, stay tuned for the video. So as I mentioned in that brief intro, my goal was to identify some key comics that are associated with characters that appeared in the Aquaman movie. And the very first book that I looked up wasn't the first appearance of Aquaman because that book is expensive, but I chose to look up the origin of the Silver Age version of Aquaman. And that happened to occur in Adventure Comics issue number 260 from 1959. Now this book at a respectable 7.5 has an FMV of $450. The next thing that I wanted to do was to look up the most recent sale. And for this comic, it happened to be in September of last year. And that book at a 7.5 was sold for $575. Given the important role of the Black Manta in the Aquaman movie, I wanted to look up his first appearance as well. And that occurred in Aquaman issue number 35 from 1967. This book, again, at a respectable 7.5, has an FMV of only $475. And as you would imagine, my thing was, how much is the book selling for? Because sometimes there's a little bit of a disconnect. So the last sale was in August of 2020 for $492. So with both of the first two books, we are pretty close to FMV, definitely closer with the Black Manta first appearance versus the Silver Age origin of Aquaman, but still, it is not crazy and far apart. Next, because of the role that she played, I wanted to look up the first appearance of Mera. And that occurred in Aquaman issue number 11 from 1963. Again, at a respectable 7.5 for this book, it has an FMV of $625. The most recent sale was in July for $650. Again, very close to the FMV. Now, what was very interesting for all of these aforementioned books is that there have not been sales recently, and that kind of, caught my attention. Now, what's interesting is I do believe that there is another Aquaman book, or movie, I should say, in the works. So the question becomes, how might these books be affected with the upcoming release of that other movie? And in my head, both Mera and Black Manta will be appearing in that next version as well. But as you guys know, if you've seen the movie, you know that there is an additional character that had a pretty high profile, and that was Aquaman's half-brother, Orm. At least I believe that that's how you say it. His first appearance was in Aquaman issue number 29 from 1966. This book at a 7.5 has an FMV of only $280. The Ocean Master's first appearance has an FMV of $280. The most recent sale was below FMV, and it actually occurred in December of 2020 for $269.99. Again, very close to FMV. The very last book that I looked up is the most expensive one on the entire list. And even in comparison to other, Silver Age books, it's not crazy expensive. That book was actually the first solo title for Aquaman. Aquaman issue number 1 from 1962. This book at a 7.5 has an FMV of $1,150. The most recent sale for this comic was in September of last year, and the final price was $1,200. Again, the Aquaman movie arguably was one of the best movies that has been released from DC. I think that it is also a money-making movie for DC. And they are coming out with a second. A sequel is going to be forthcoming. And several of the characters that I've mentioned in this video thus far will potentially be in that sequel. So the question becomes, is now the time to pick up some of these books? What happens with DC Comics is it's a little bit different than what happens with Marvel Comics in the MCU. Those books tend to spike as a result of what happens with the movies and sometimes with the TV shows. But DC is behaving a little bit differently. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over time. But one of the great things I think about the environment that we're in right now is that watching the movies and the TV shows motivates and inspires me to actually go find and read some of these comics. And I think that that's really cool because I've never been into Aquaman. I watched this movie and I'm like, Aquaman, the Black Manta are super dope. And I'm kicking myself for having missed some of those really awesome covers that came out in, 2019 and also in 2020 that featured Aquaman and Mera and Black Manta and all that kind of stuff. So again, time will tell how this all plays out. Now, with that said, I do want to show you guys some of the books that I managed to find while hunting for comics in my own collection that are related to Aquaman. I didn't find any of these keys, but I did find some awesome books nevertheless. The first is from Volume 2. It's actually a limited series that I do believe is considered Volume 2 of Aquaman. And this is issue number 1. And I think that this is the issue where he dons a new costume. Don't think that there's anything else significant about this book, but it is definitely a cool cover and it's very different from a lot of the Aquaman books that I was able to find in the collection. Next up is a book from what I believe is Volume 3, which was released in 1991. This again is issue number 1 of that book. And again, here, I don't think that anything crazy happened, but you guys may correct me on that one. But issue number 1 of Volume 3. Next up, I have a couple of books, one from Volume 4. This one is actually pretty cool because this is the origin of the Black Manta. This is issue number 6, again from Volume 4. Really cool cover right here that is reminiscent of a couple of amazing Spider-Man covers. Next, I have a few books from Volume 5, and I think I have a healthy number of books from Volume 5, period, but I only pulled a couple. I started with issue number 1, and I want to say that this one actually has a first appearance, and I cannot remember who the appearance was, but issue number 1, Volume 5. The next 2 are pretty cool. This is where Aquaman actually loses his hand. This is issue number 2, again, of Volume 5, and then in issue 0, he actually replaces his hand with a hook. This is issue 0, and I believe that actually came out after the last one that I just showed you a moment ago. So there you go. A couple of really cool books from the collection. And what was cool is that I was able to actually find multiple copies of just about each one of these. So that was really cool. And so for those people that have asked me the question about the 100K collection, which is where these books came from, I do want to point out that the 100K is not the price tag that was paid for the collection. it is actually a reference to the number of books that were purchased. I've actually received that question a few times. I've seen it in comments, and I wanted to finally address it here so that everyone had some awareness. With that said, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, I certainly want to encourage you to hit the thumbs up button, leave a comment behind so we can mix it up in the comment section. If you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I definitely want to encourage you to do that. That way you don't miss out on any of the content that I release from the channel. And if you need to reach out to me directly, you can do so in the comment section or on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.